Hi, it's Mary Brownlee, licensed professional counselor. Today we're talking about scapegoating. Are you the family scapegoat? What has your experiences been in your family of origin? I can definitely relate to scapegoating myself. I think this is something that is very common in dysfunctional families. Usually one person is singled out as the problem in the family. In family systems therapy, we call this the identified patient. So you'll see, for example, if the whole family comes into therapy, they usually will have somebody that they've picked out as the problem that is really the cause of all of the family's, identified issues. Doesn't mean it's actually true. So if you recall, a couple videos ago during the family genogram that I showed and kind of how that generational trauma comes down, through the generations, no one in the family really is ever really accountable for any of the abuse that happens in the family system. So that's part of why scapegoating happens. There's already a lot of dysfunction in the entire system. There has been for generations. There's not like open, healthy communication, for example. There's not accountability. There's not, a recognition of damage that's being done from all the unhealthy patterns in the family. Those high adverse childhood experiences, for example, that we talked about in my first video. So if those things are going on and there's not a lot of insight and a lot of responsibility in the family, scapegoating is definitely going to happen. So how do you know you are the family scapegoat? All right, let's go through these. There's a few I picked out that I'm going to talk about today. So the first one is you are blamed for the family's problems. If you know, right? So this is just so common. I see it happen in a lot of my clients. They come in really doubting themselves, wondering if they're the crazy ones, feeling the whole weight of the family's wrath or blame or shame, for example. And the more you get to know them, you realize, no, you're not the problem. So, yeah. For example, there could be plenty of, alcoholism, for example, in the family, or lots of physical abuse or verbal or emotional abuse, but somehow they'll pick out, you, for example, as the actual problem. Maybe it's because you're actually the truth teller or the person who actually doesn't like abuse and speaks up. And now they'll really single you out for, being the problem. In our families of origin, nobody really wants to talk about the giant elephant that's in the room. The giant elephant that's in the room is the family is abusive and is harming members of the family, but no one's talking about it. So instead of actually talking about the giant elephant in the room, they're going to be like, it's his problem, it's her problem, they're the reason why we're so miserable. So yeah, you're going to be blamed for all sorts of things that are not your fault. And so it's very hard when we're adults, for example, to even know what's real or not real. The term gaslighting, for example, comes up a lot in these types of abuse situations. It's so hard to know what our own reality is when we have been told our whole lives that we're responsible for other people's emotions, or we're responsible for other people's misery, or, we're the reason the family is fighting. Yeah, it's hard to even know or trust what our gut is telling us that we're actually being abused. So yeah, being blamed for the family's problems, big sign you're a scapegoat. Always cast in a negative light. Oh, yes. So it doesn't matter. I tell my clients, you could be like a NASA astronaut, for example. You could literally hold several PhDs, be, top of your class, just wonderful person. And they're still going to project really negative things onto you. So yeah, it doesn't matter how successful you become. In the family's eyes, you were always the problem, the screw up, the too sensitive one. They're never going to really recognize anything that you do. You will always be wrong. So again, they're not going to recognize if you've done anything right. And they have a vested interest for not recognizing anything you do right, because then they wouldn't have a scapegoat. So somebody else would have to fill that role. So again, we fill a role in the family of kind of the family punching bag or the garbage can where everybody gets to project their own garbage onto us so they feel better. It's a form of denial. It's a form of, blame shifting. And it's that protective mechanism that's protecting them from emotional pain to just dump it all on us. Much easier to dump it on someone else than to take accountability and do the hard work that this type of healing, requires. So, yeah. Ignored. So our successes are not recognized. We are ignored. Frequently, clients come in feeling invisible. So either they were yelled and screamed at all the time, or they were completely invisible to the rest of the family. So yeah, maybe you can relate to either one of those scenarios, or maybe, both. For example, sometimes families switch off from yelling and screaming to ignoring. And scapegoats can also be, they can shift around. So it's possible, for example, maybe you were the golden child, for example, as a child in your family, but now you're the scapegoat. So yeah, these roles can shift around based on whatever the family needs at the moment. Golden child, by the way, for those that don't know, is the favorite son or daughter. This is the sibling who can do no wrong. And ironically, the golden child oftentimes is not the healthiest member. They are the one usually that the narcissistic parent or the abusive parent most closely identifies with. So for example, the golden child is somebody who typically does whatever narcissistic mom or dad wants, make sure to please them, never tells them no. Oftentimes they are the one that also abuses the scapegoat on behalf of the narcissistic parent. They are oftentimes very similar to the narcissistic parent in terms of personality, temperament, likes, dislikes, etc. So we have to remember the abusive parents or narcissistic parents, they don't have a sense of self. And so if there's a specific child that makes them feel good about themselves, that's going to be the golden child versus the scapegoat, right? We're not making them feel good about themselves. Maybe we're reminding them of things they're ashamed of, or maybe they're jealous, for example. In my family, I was the too sensitive one. So that was the label I got. And I do suspect possibly that my sensitivity triggered something within my parent that evoked maybe their own shame or their own childhood wounds, for example. And so I was picked as the problem, as opposed to, going into therapy and working on my parents' own issues. So yeah, we're labeled. As a scapegoat, you will always be labeled. And there's always a very rigid role that you will be locked into place. So it doesn't matter. And again, I see this repeatedly in a lot of my clients. It doesn't matter how successful you are, how old you are, you will always be seen as this too stupid, idiot, not good enough, like 8-year-old, for example. So you'll always, anytime you're around your narcissistic parent or your abusive parent, you always feel like you are this inept, inadequate, dumb, small child, and boom, you'll revert right back into that role as soon as you cross the threshold to your family home. The amount of masking that a lot of us survivors have to do to just make it through family functions is very distressing. So yeah, that happens a lot to a lot of us who are scapegoats. And if we're still in contact, we really have to just terribly, terribly mask who we authentically really are just to stay safe in the family, which is very, very sad. Gaslighting. So yeah, I did speak about gaslighting a little bit too. That's where really where your entire reality is undermined. Like, you're the truth teller. You see the abuse for what it is. You see the dynamics for what they are. And you're willing to call it out, for example, or not tolerate. And you bet they will undermine your reality. So again, there is a vested interest in maintaining status quo in the family. What would the neighbors think, for example? It's all about appearances. Nobody wants to feel bad, or to actually address the actual issues that are going on. It's much easier just to be in denial and pretend everything's fine. So yeah, there's a lot of gaslighting where your own reality is undermined and said, no, you're imagining that. You're making that up. You're the too sensitive one, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, our reality being undermined happens a lot in these types of families. Punished for truth telling. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So again, if you are trying to hold members accountable for harm that is being done, there will be backlash. Oh, there will be backlash. And it ranges from being disinherited to being thrown out of the family, ostracized, estrangement, shunning. Shunning happens in families like ours. Again, the dysfunctional family dynamics, again, generational trauma, it's been going on for generations. This is not something that we are going to win against as a scapegoat. We're not going to be able to change the family dynamics. They've been going on for generations before we even enter the picture. And when we try to stand up and say, no, this is not okay, I'm not okay with this, the family is not going to react well. Again, they have a vested interest for maintaining status quo. Status quo is everything that they've always known. It makes them feel good to not be accountable and to not have to work on their own emotional pain and generational trauma. So they got to oust us. We are a reminder of everything that they don't like within themselves and their own sense of shame or inadequacy, and we got to go. So oftentimes, frequently, scapegoats will be ostracized or shunned, or really like the abuse will go up even more so if they try to, really address any family dynamics that are not acceptable. So yeah, truth telling is punished in a family system like ours if we're the scapegoat. Healthy families, nah. You can go to one another and just talk it out. It's not a big deal. In unhealthy families, you can't go and just have open, honest dialogues. Not close with your siblings. So this is very common in families where scapegoating happens. Again, you're going to have that golden child dynamic, scapegoat dynamic. So children are ultimately what's happening is children are not seen and heard and valued for who they really are. Again, we're taking on certain roles to make the parent feel better. So they're not going to see us for who we really are. And then what happens is siblings get pitted against each other from a very young age. And there's not enough love to go around, right? It's not like our parents are unconditionally loving. So siblings are vying for the very meager scraps of love that parents do dole out. So you will see heavy competition between siblings, nastiness, infighting, smear campaigns, just lots of really unhealthy behaviors. And it's very common for siblings to not be close to one another and for estrangements and cutoffs to happen. Because again, it's not like closeness was fostered in the family right from the get-go. That just was not something that was valued. And again, none of us in the family system are valued for who we authentically really are. So there's not really any authentic, real connection and relating to one another either. So it's kind of like you're doomed from the start, sadly. The relationships are just not genuine, authentic, loving relationships. The family makes you feel guilt and shame. So this is our final one. So yeah. They are just, again, how much woundedness is going through the generations and no one is either aware or wants to address their own pain. So somebody's got to be responsible for why they feel like crap. The scapegoat. That's the reason they feel like crap. And so you bet they're going to heap a lot of shame and guilt on us. That's also a form of control. Again, we've talked about in other videos of mine, fog, fear, obligation, guilt. So that is something all abusers do to try to control your behavior. So if you're not doing what the abusive or narcissistic parents wants you to do, they're going to make you either fearful by threatening you. They're going to make you feel obligated or guilty. Oh, poor pity me after everything I've done for you, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, shame, guilt, heavy tactics used to control the scapegoat and get them back into line. And the other family members will do it too. Oh, you're upsetting mom or dad, get back into line. And so they'll shame or guilt you and try to get you to fall back into your role, your very passive role as scapegoat, where yes, let me just be the family punching bag and accept all the blame for why the family is miserable. So yeah, hopefully some of these things were helpful and validating for you to hear. Let me know if you were the family scapegoat. Can you relate to any of these? Anything else that maybe I didn't talk about that you experienced. So feel free in the comments to let me know your experiences with family scapegoating. Again, leave me a like, please subscribe. There will be more videos and I appreciate all of you so much. Take care.